gentlemen, start your podcast.
Now, I thought that would be the appropriate beginning. What do you think,
That is
guys?
a good beginning, yes.
Welcome to another edition of Boomers with Beverages. Artie, not too bad.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Probably could do some voice work if you tried.
I was thinking about starting that
Maybe.
next week.
Yeah, I think you'd be good at it. That was very cool.
Thank you.
You know, in any form, however you say that gentlemen start whatever, but, obviously, gentlemen start your engines. You know, in Indiana, in Indianapolis, it is a special time. Anybody that's grown up here knows the month of May has so many memories. It's just amazing. And we get to share that today on Boomers with Beverages with a good friend of all of ours who doesn't just go back with Indy 500 history, but comedy history, too. And we're going to talk to Dave Wilson coming up here in just a few minutes. But on behalf of everybody else, I'm Jim Burrows. BoomersWithBeverages.com is our website. We got Pete Molina here today. Pete, good to see you.
Great to be here. Fabulous day here in Central Indiana.
Pete just apparently picked up the clothes that were on the floor, threw them on, and came to do the podcast because he knows it really doesn't matter.
It's important to address wardrobe in a podcast.
Well, you also know that Pete, being a tennis aficionado, you're always kind of dressed to play.
Have to be ready to go at any
match,
minute.
just in case a tennis match breaks out somewhere.
That's right.
Because I usually always say, like, in Indiana, there's always a pickup game of basketball any moment. Yeah, because I'm sure tennis happens just like that. People are
when I'm at the club, if they're short a player, sometimes you got to fill in. Got to be ready.
You're supposed to kind of say that with a snobbish voice. When I'm at the club.
No. I remember when tennis really was kind of a country club sport, and it was pretty snooty, and not that way anymore. But at one time, that was kind of the perception.
Yeah.
Dan Davis, good to see you. Welcome back.
Good to be here. Thank you so much.
Are you okay?
I'm okay.
You doing?
Are you okay?
I think maybe.
I'm as well as can be expected under the circumstances.
I understand, and I appreciate you working under such stress.
Thank you.
You are an amazing man. At least that's what that $20.
That's what my press kit says.
Forced me to say. And why am I not surprised? That's what your press kit says.
Isn't there truth in advertising, or they just don't care about that?
Truth-ish. It's what we're looking for.
Dan, most of Dan's life now is ish.
Lots of ish going on over here.
Artie.
Yeah.
How are you?
I've got a little stomachache right now. I'm trying this new cologne. It's awful. It's really awful.
Maybe you should just apply it externally.
In other words, don't drink it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We'll get some more details on that new cologne later. As far as what we're drinking today, I think I've done this on maybe 3 or 4 of the last handful of podcasts. I'm trying something for the very first time. And you guys know I'm not a drinker.
Yes, you're not a drinker.
Not a drinker.
You guys are big drinkers, and I do try to do some of those IPAs, which for me stands for it's probably awful.
Yeah.
But this is from Rheingeist Brewery, and I think Rheingeist is local.
Cincinnati.
Well, close.
Yeah.
We can call it local.
Well, drink it and let's see
This is called the Wowie Colada. See, I'm a pina colada guy. I love pina coladas. Good luck finding any in Indianapolis.
A good one, yeah.
Nobody has a blender. I feel like I should take a blender with me wherever I go.
Here, take this
Well,
blender.
yeah, they don't have blenders because they're not doing comedy one-nighters anymore. Because the blender was such an important part of the one-nighter in the bar.
Wow. It's almost like a PTSD moment for comedy.
Oh, yes, exactly.
You hear a blender sound anywhere you are. You're like,
It's like, okay, there goes that punchline.
last Yoder gig. All right, so here's my Wowie Colada. Oh. Wow.
That look on your face is not good.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's not
good.
wow as in wowie. It's wow as in what in the hell made them think this was a beer? Oh, Lord.
See, it just, as a general rule of thumb, if I want a pina colada,
You want a sip, Pete?
I will order myself a pina colada,
Yeah.
not a beer that's supposed to taste,
Yeah, but see.
you be you, Jim.
No, we're trying to make you think outside the box because you're.
I want to stay in my box when it comes to pina coladas. I've got a nice, tidy box.
We're trying to get Dan out of his Ned Flanders mode.
Yes.
As soon as we break him free.
I am left-handed.
Yeah, I know you are.
And not only does that taste bad, that's a hideous-looking can.
It is a
They've
hideous-looking
done nothing
can.
to promote this. And
I haven't seen a can more hideous than on a Kardashian. So that's
Apparently. Apparently, they lost a bet.
That's not very good.
All right.
Well, let's move
you
on.
lose, therefore.
I'm hoping you guys have something better. I know Artie's drinking something better because I've had that.
This is my favorite. One of my favorite things to drink. Sun King Brewery, Weemac.
Yeah.
Oh, love the Weemac.
Very nice. Pete Molina, what do you got?
Big one.
What are you drinking?
Modelo Especial.
Ooh, yes.
Mexican beer.
I like it.
That sounds special.
Dan Davis, what do you got?
I am having a Yangling Golden Lager.
Yummy.
Which is, one of my favorites.
I'll trade you.
It's a good, no, you won't.
He's like, no, you won't. I don't want your beer. No, you stick with your beer.
This is awful. Would you like it? Yeah. Okay.
Boomerswithbeverages.com is our website. And Dan, fill everybody in about our YouTube TV channel.
YouTube, we are at BWBTV645.
Lots of videos on there.
Lots of great stuff. Yeah, put up a couple new ones yesterday.
I know. You put up the video of the bug pooping on my Ring doorbell.
It's finally there, yes.
That's what that was.
Top Bug Maverick, we call it.
Want to give a quick kudos to Kevin and the staff at AJ's Bar and Grill here
Indeed.
on Fall Creek Road. This is a new venue for us. You guys remember a few months back, we did 4-day rave for a few months.
We did.
Brian and those guys over there were fantastic. Kevin, incredibly receptive to say, yeah, come on out, take the stage and do the podcast. So we'll be here for our next few recordings and maybe a little bit longer once Dan gets back from his sabbatical. He's going up to the hinterlands of Michigan.
And I think the best thing about AJ's, it is far closer to Artie and my house. So there we go.
You did a power walk to get here, didn't you?
Basically, yeah.
In
that I walked to my car and drove. Yeah.
I was going to say.
It was a very powerful walk from this house to the garage.
I'm here at least once a week. At least once a week. On a Tuesday night, they do a great steak special. I don't know if you've heard about it. It's $13.99. Steak, baked potato salad. It's amazing.
How much?
$13.99 for a bacon wrap fillet, cooked the way you want it. It's absolutely fantastic. But you can't beat that deal.
So check it out if you are in Indianapolis for the festivities coming up throughout the month of May, and you find yourself over in this area of town. It's AJ's Bar and Grill. So let's do top of mind real quick. Artie, what do you got?
Okay, I moved to Indianapolis back in 1967. That's when we moved from Memphis, Tennessee. We literally were the Beverly Hillbillies with just a better car. But we were driving into town, and Dad turns the radio on, and the first thing we heard, I don't even remember who the announcer was, but it was the Indianapolis 500. And we're hearing the cars going around, and I'm going, Dad, those sound like bees. Is this bees? Are those bees? He goes, no, those are the cars going around the track. And the first thing I thought of was, okay, they must be really small cars. But that was my first experience with the 500. We're from Memphis, Tennessee. We knew cotton and barbecue. That's all we knew.
I love it.
But it was a great moment for us.
That's neat. I love it. Thanks for sharing that one. Pete Molina, what do you got for your top of mind?
Well, a lot of stuff going on in my family this week. My daughter Lizzie graduates from law school on Saturday, so we're proud of her.
Lizzie.
And Jimmy just announced he's taking a transfer with his job. He's going to be moving to Boston. Not quite sure when, but in the next 60 days. So
I'm going to give him my kid's number.
All right.
We're excited. I'm excited for him because it's a great career opportunity. A little nervous because it's really his first time to be away from his network of his support system. So, but it'll be good. It's time for him to kind of branch out, and he'll learn a lot about himself. And I'm just excited because Boston's one of my favorite cities, so I got more of a reason to go visit.
I can't wait to hear his accent when he gets home. Think about it.
Dan, what do you
got? Top of mind. It's Indianapolis. It's May. We got folks in from out of town. Be nice.
Yeah. And don't complain about the road work.
Exactly.
But
we're improving.
That's what we do.
What are we,
It'll be a great city once we get it finished.
My top of mind, I like to just throw out some information that I find on the internet because you can believe everything on the internet.
Everything.
A recent survey found that 1/3 of adults still sleep with a comfort object.
Did they elaborate on some of these?
Well, I would assume it's like a blanket or maybe a stuffed animal maybe you had as a kid you still cling to. There are some adults that still have their
Would you call a fifth of whiskey a comfort object?
Yeah.
Because there have been nights.
That'll work.
Could you do a little research and see if there are therapy groups for these people?
No, but I do want to clarify, we're not talking about anything that requires a C cell or D cell. So this is like more of
just AA, AAA.
Well, maybe there's a smaller version you're referring to.
Man, how big do you need?
I have no
wonder he had prostate surgery.
Exactly. Hey, it was worth the journey. I can't wait to go back. Anyway,
increasingly uncomfortable.
We want to
All
thank everybody for being here at AJ's today. We got a little bit of a lunch crowd, which is awesome. They got a good crew here at AJ's Bar and Grill. We do have a special guest out there we're going to give a quick nod to, because hopefully somewhere down the road he'll be part of one of our podcasts. But we have another comic that when we were all starting out, I mean, this is more so for Dan, Pete, and I as the young guys, there were 4 comics that the club owners always said, you get on their good side so they can make recommendations and you're going to be good to go. And those were Dave Wilson, Dave Dugan, Randy Montgomery, and Artie Widgery.
Yep.
So you pretty much knew those were the big 4. You had to get on their good side.
How did we get in that? How did we get there?
Because you're sitting here at the table, and it would have been rude to leave you.
Maybe. So anyway, a big hello to Randy Montgomery. Thanks for stopping by to say hey to us. And now we'd like to introduce you to our special guest that we are so excited to have, Dave the King Wilson.
Thank you. Good to be here. Good to be here with you. This will be, if everything goes good, my 56th Indianapolis 500. I grew up on the west side. My mom was from Speedway. My dad was from Dana, Indiana, but my mom went to school in Speedway, and as my whole life, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway has been in my life. I grew up at 30th and Georgetown in Eagledale. Thank you very much. And I remember the earliest days driving down. My grandparents still lived in Speedway. We lived in Eagledale, so going up and down Georgetown Road by the track all the time. And as I was really young, I remember looking at the back of the grandstands thinking, when are they going to finish that building? Because it just looked like unfinished buildings to me all the way up and down. But this memory, I remember the first time I got glasses when I was 8 years old, and the Goodyear blimp flew over, and I go, Dad, look, somebody wrote Goodyear on the side of the blimp. And he goes, I'm raising an idiot. But there's so many, the things that the whole thing, it was so neat when Artie started the show off with Gentlemen Start Your Podcast, because Gentlemen Start Your Engines. Now, there's several stories on how that originated. It originated at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. The most popular one that Donald would tell on occasion was 1946, the first race after the 500. Tony Homan had bought the Indianapolis Motor Speedway from Eddie Rickenbacker in November of 45 when World War II had ended. And so it's the first 500 in 46, and the drivers race morning decided they weren't happy with the purse, and they threatened to strike. So Wilbur Shaw, who was a 3-time Indianapolis 500 winner, was from down around Seymour or South Central Indiana. He was the president at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway working for Tony Homan, and all morning long, race morning, he's negotiating with the drivers and the owners to come to a conclusion so they could have the Indianapolis 500 that first day. And so they finally reached an agreement. So when it came to time to start the race, Wilbur Shaw was going to give the command, and he said sarcastically, "Gentlemen, start your engines." So that's how that whole thing started. And it was after a hard, very bitter negotiation is where that all came out.
It's an interesting history, isn't it? Because
most certainly.
Literally was pretty close to never even being an event.
Right. Well, the track opened in 1909, and the first event they did there was a balloon race.
Wow.
And the Indianapolis Motor Speedway management at the time learned a very valuable lesson, and that was it was 25 cents to go on the grounds to watch the balloon race. And traffic was backed up, according to records, all the way from 16th Street all the way downtown. Thousands of people coming out to see this. But the management soon learned that you could enjoy balloons taking off from outside the track and not paying 25 cents.
There you go.
As easy as you could from inside the track. And actually, the balloon, it was the furthest you went, and they went down in Alabama somewhere was where the winning balloon went. Had some motorcycle races was the next series of events there, and then some car races, and it was on a track. The track at that point was gravel and tar, and it would potholes. You think we have potholes bad here? Well, the race cars were hitting those, and it was killing people. So they ended up bricking the speedway, where it got the name, the Brickyard, 3,200,000 bricks. And in 1911 had the very first Indy 500.
Was it always a 2.5-mile track?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And that's because when they built, and originally they were going to have a road course through the infield, which they have now, but back then they didn't do it. But originally it was designed to do that. But they bought that property, and it was a test track because Indianapolis at that time had more car manufacturers than anywhere in the United States.
Yeah.
Detroit had not blossomed as it would. And so they wanted a test track, and so that's where that came up with. So they had this property, and they go, how big a track can we fit on this property? And they go, well, we can get one 2.5 miles. Well, let's make one 2.5 miles there. And that's why the track is so close to the Georgetown Road and 16th Street and all that, because they build it right up to the edge.
So, Dave, you mentioned Gentlemen Start Your Engine as a historic start of the race. There have been a few years where there have been some ladies in there, so they had to slightly alter that. Can you share with us how many times they had to modify it?
First time was in 1997 when Janet Guthrie
I remember that.
made the 500. And this was an unbelievable deal, because up until 1971, women were not allowed in the garage area.
Wow.
What?
They were a
71?
distraction.
But wasn't Mario's camper the exception? Or
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, yeah, Miss First Shifter.
Or Bobby Unser.
But that's amazing.
Bobby Unser used to, God bless his soul, Uncle Bob.
Yeah.
Wow.
He used to wear his
71.
driver's uniform down to the white front down on 16th Street to pick up women.
Did he really?
Oh yeah.
That's right.
So, but anyway, yeah. So in 1977, Janet Guthrie made the 500. And initially, Tony Homan said, who was given the command, said, well, I'm just going to say, actually it's men starting the engines, with the starters.
Yeah.
So I'm just going ahead and still say, gentlemen, start your engines, because the guys and the mechanics. Well, Kay Bignotti, who's her dad was Louis Meyer, who was the first 3-time winner. She was married to George Bignotti, who was a chief mechanic who'd won a bunch of races. She goes, well, then, okay, all right, well, I'll volunteer. I'll start her car to force you to say. To change
That's
something.
great.
So he said, in deference to the first lady to compete, driver start your engine. So that's how that all started. And then since then, we've had, obviously
Quite a few, which is a good. It's a good thing. So
yeah.
I got to say, Gentlemen Start Your Engines, any tradition that starts from sarcasm, I think is worth celebrating.
Sure,
right.
I want more of those.
Right.
But the track's gone through a lot of definitely modernization in terms of things they've gotten rid of. I know they don't do the balloons anymore, unfortunately, which is such a huge thing.
Right.
But it's so different, because I remember my first race was 76.
Who
And
won,
so yours, was it Rutherford?
Yep, exactly.
I think it was
Very
I think there was rain too, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe
maybe
there was, but it was the second of 3.
First time I'd ever gone, and our tickets were in the third turn. Never been. So I'm sitting there on a metal bench in a pouring rain, going, "Woohoo!"
Yeah. Well, so when was AJ's fourth? Was that 77?
77.
So yeah, that was my first one.
Yeah.
But we were in the infield.
Yeah.
So I did not see a car.
Anything.
Well,
Yeah.
what's interesting,
Not a race
few other
car.
things.
There are plenty of
and also too, back then in the 70s, you still had very much a marketplace inside the track. You had vendors galore, which I think eventually they pushed all the vendors outside the track that they didn't allow. You could
plenty of unofficial vendors.
Exactly, all kinds of merchandise and things going on, and
you had Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's what you had in the infield.
So true.
And they cleaned that up, and it kind of for a while it kind of ruined a lot of people, because that for a lot of folks that was their introduction to the Indianapolis 500. They would go there and party, and then eventually they get a little later in their 20s and they go, oh, what was that? That was interesting. And then all of a sudden, hey, let's watch the race. And then all of a sudden they're buying tickets, and then they're bringing their kids, and that's how the progression grew. And they ended up, when they started getting the suites up there, they got the, here we got a guy paying $50,000 to have a suite, and right across the street, you can look across the track, and here's this all debauchery, and the Indiana State Police walking in teams of 20. Literally, they would be in a team of 20 walking through there trying to restore
I can't imagine.
order.
Some of the pictures from that era.
Oh yeah.
Fantastic. You talk about a coffee table.
I think you could safely say that at one time the snake pit, which is what it was called in the infield, was the lowest form of human behavior for 24 hours.
There's a story a guy told me about being in the infield in the 70s, and he and a buddy had to go to the bathroom, so they're standing in the line thinking they're in the line getting in the bathroom. And turns out they look up, and they're actually in a line to there was a van with a young woman in the van.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, was she reading stories and stuff
train
like
station all of a sudden.
She was reading tarot cards.
Yeah, we need to get over and do another line.
We need to be.
She was saying, "Gentlemen, I'll start your engine." Yes. Here you go.
Wow.
Here you go.
You can finish here.
And I remember the bathrooms. The bathrooms back then were boards of wood with holes cut in them, and you had like a trough in the middle. hospital.
Somebody bought a trough recently. Was
They
it
still got the
you?
drop.
But there were no
Did you buy a
no
trough?
flush bathrooms for the general public, right?
No. Well, I wanted to. When they got rid of them, when Roger Penske bought the track in 2020, they went through there and on the main straightaway especially, they got rid of all those great big troughs.
Right.
And I would have bought one had they allowed me to, but I saw them out there one night, and the next morning they were gone. They threw them away.
Oh.
But in 66, Graham Hill came here. Graham Hill was a Formula One champion, and the British invasion had kind of started here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and he was appalled that in the restrooms in the garage area there were no doors on the commodes. And so he complained, and Tony Holman ended up putting doors on the commodes to appease Graham Hill.
Taking a little break from our conversation with Dave Wilson here to talk to this year's Indy 500 milkmen. We have the veteran milkman, Kerry Estes, and the rookie milkman, Alex Neuenschwander. So welcome, guys, to the Boomers with Beverages podcast.
Thanks for having us.
We're talking about the original beverage, milk. So, Kerry, this year, you're going to be the guy that hands the bottle of milk to the winner of the Indy 500.
That's exactly right.
And then, Alex, you are in training to be that guy next year.
I am. Yep. I'm going to learn everything I can from Kerry.
Tell me about this process. Kerry, how did you get to be the milkman?
Well, there's two ways you can get to be the milkman. One is by an application that you turn into the American Dairy Association, and another is by nomination. And so I was asked if I would be willing to do this, and of course, I absolutely jumped at the chance.
Sure. And so, Kerry, you are a first-generation dairy farmer, and Alex, fourth generation?
I'm fourth generation on our dairy farm. Yep.
And so, yeah, Kerry, you started your farm in 2005.
Yes, we actually purchased our farm in 1999, but started our dairy operation in 2005.
And you're in Fountaintown area?
That's correct. That's just below New Palestine.
The first bottle of milk, Louis Meyer wanted buttermilk.
Well, that's exactly right. His mother sent with him a bottle of buttermilk, but she said, Louis, you got to be quenched on a hot day. So he was photographed after winning his 500, drinking a big old bottle of buttermilk. And so that image stuck, and that's where the tradition began.
That because that is so wild that you just, I mean, my parents drank buttermilk. They drank with pepper. They would sprinkle pepper in the top of their buttermilk. And, I like buttermilk for baking, but I'm much more of I'm a whole milk, chocolate milk kind of guy myself. So
I'm going to have to agree with you on that.
Has anyone ever had chocolate milk?
No, we stick with real milk. Okay. Real white milk. We want everyone to see that pure product in a bottle. And so drivers are given their choice of whole, 2%, and low-fat milk.
Okay.
A couple drivers do actually write in buttermilk because they want to stick with that tradition. And whole and 2%, low-fat, that's what we offer.
Okay. Interesting. And so what sort of training is involved here? I mean, do you like practice runs, things like that?
I think I've handed the bottle of milk in my sleep several times. My big concern is, this bottle is wet and it's ice cold.
Yeah.
I don't want to drop this thing.
No,
I don't want to be the only guy in history to have dropped the bottle of milk. So I am a little concerned about that, being totally honest.
That's right. Now, how long have they had a dairy farmer as the milk delivery guy?
I believe it was the mid-50s when the tradition really began after Louis Meyer in the 30s. They started doing it an every year thing. Mm-hmm. But I think it's been in the last 8 or 10 years that a farmer actually is the one that's given the driver the milk.
So, and Alex, yours is called New Hope Dairy.
Yes, that's right. New Hope Dairy. We're located in Bluffton, Indiana, which is a little bit south of Fort Wayne. Mm-hmm. So, really excited to represent the Bluffton community here as well. Being able to represent dairy farmers, hardworking men and women, and Indiana dairy farmers. Really excited about that.
Kerry, how many cows do you have on your farm?
Yes, so we milk about 150 cows.
Wow.
And we raise about that many replacements.
Okay. And Alex, how many you got?
Yeah, so we milk about 1,000 cows, and we keep about 600 younger animals around as well.
Wow. How many people does it take to milk 1,000 cows?
We have a team of about 15 people.
Okay.
family, and then we also have some hired hands.
And yeah, I was seeing, Kerry, you decided to start your dairy farm so that your family could be involved together. So is it just your family operating with your 100-some cows?
It is. It's just my wife and our 4 kids. My oldest son just recently got married, and so I hired him as my whopping 1 employee. But I think it's so cool in Indiana how you have dairies that are different sizes. You've got small dairies, you've got large dairies.
Right.
And I think we need them both to be able to supply everyone with the milk. And I think that gives the whole industry strength.
It's great talking with you guys, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you for having us. And
absolutely.
Make sure you remember that winners drink milk.
Thanks, guys. Thanks to Kerry and Alex, the 2023 Indy 500 milkmen, for giving us their time. And now, back to our conversation with Dave Wilson.
It's an interesting. The history of the track just is always fascinating to me. Yeah. Because sometimes it's its own worst enemy. Because when you look at as it progressed through the 80s, you still had pole day, which pole day was mini race day, and for a lot of people that was their race day because they could afford to get the ticket to go to pole day. But then when you had the IndyCar kart feud, pole day went away forever. Sadly,
well, it kind of actually started going away a little before that. Because
did it?
For years, pole day had its appeal was how fast are they going to go?
Yeah.
And by the 90s, they had kind of started. It wasn't even the early 90s, and the split happened in '96. But
do you think that was because there weren't as many teams to make it as competitive, or what do you think?
They were just you reach a limit, and they're trying to slow them down. They were trying. They figured that this is about as fast as you got to remember. In the late '50s, engineers said that it was physically impossible for a car to average more than 150 miles an hour at the Indianapolis Motor. Physically impossible. 1962, Parnelli broke the 160 mile an hour barrier, broke the barrier, broke the 150 mile an hour barrier. In 15 years later, Tom Sneva in 1977 broke the 200 mile an hour barrier. And then in 1996, R.A. Lyondike went 237.
Yeah.
So, but that was the pole day kind of dropped off. Now, an interesting story about the pole day in 1977. I was there the first day of qualifying. It was a race day size crowd. I mean, people knew this historic event was going to happen, this unbelievable barrier. A couple people had broken it unofficially in practice, Gordon Johncock, Mario Andretti, but it didn't count till you did it in qualifying. Yeah. And so everybody figured it was going to be Tom Sneva because Sneva was driving for Roger Penske. He was great at qualifying, and everybody was anticipating, and he was going out early, so they were anticipating him doing it. Well, that year also was a year that Evel Knievel, the motorcycle daredevil guy, was sponsoring a car being driven by Gary Bettenhausen. So Evel Knievel's at the track qualifying morning to watch his car qualifying. And he is dressed in a red, white, and blue leather jumpsuit with a collar up over his ears, and he had a cane, and I had this confirmed. I'd heard about this, but I had it confirmed with a guy who worked on the crew. It had a diamond in the handle that he said was telling everybody was worth $30,000 in 1977. So he's walking through there, and everybody's going nuts. There's Evel Knievel. Well, the crowd's going crazy. They're ready to go. Out on the racetrack, here comes Sneva, and everybody is on the edge of their seats. And he takes a couple warm-up laps. Well, that's right around the time they start bringing Evel Knievel out of the garage area and heading him towards pit lane. And he starts walking along, and all of a sudden, here comes Sneva, takes the green flag for the first lap, and he dives into turn number 1, and everybody says, "Oh my goodness!" And Knievel's getting closer and closer and closer and closer to the pit lane. And as he gets about 10 feet away from it, there goes Sneva, completes lap number 1. He comes diving back into turn 1, and then all of a sudden, as only Tom Carnegie could do, he cracks that mic open and he goes, "It's a new track record 200," and that's all you heard. It startled me. I remember jumping in the multitude.
Yeah.
They had to grab him and pull him back.
I know for me the big moment, but pre to that, I respected it. I enjoyed the race, and this was before I started working at WIBC and actually worked, in the pits and worked at the race. But my brother bought tickets in '82, and we were on the main straightaway, right across from, literally just a few feet from the start-finish line. That hooked me forever.
Yeah.
And everybody knows that was the John Cock Mears
battle.
And my nod to AJ, and that was that damn Coogan kid.
Yeah.
You know.
Who hit you, AJ? Coogan.
The Coogan kid. And that blew me away because it's like the race hadn't even started, and this obviously he wasn't ready for the acceleration there. You know, but then again, it ends up being, for quite some time, the closest race in history. It's not. It isn't anymore. No. But that hooked me. Did you have a moment like that hooked you with Indy?
Oh, well, I think in March of 1963, I was 8 years old. My dad came home from work one day, and he said, "You want to go to the track? They're tire testing." And I go, yeah. And I mean, I'd never been in the track. And I remember we parked outside the main gate, walked into Grandstand D in the first turn, and I just remember seeing the inside of that track for the first time. And that picture is embedded in my mind. That because even though I've been up and down there my whole life, I never realized really how big it was until you see the inside. And I'm standing there just slack-jawed, staring at this infield, and all of a sudden, Eddie Sachs went by in a red and yellow Offie-powered roadster, and I was hooked.
Yeah.
And I mean, I went to school 79 right over on 34th Street. So, you know, the windows are open the month of May. You know, spring fever's bad enough for a kid. You know, you're wanting to get the heck out of there. But I can hear the cars running. And I could tell the difference between a Ford and an Offie. And I'm going, oh, man, that's probably AJ diving into Ford. Oh, that has to be Mario. That was a Ford, you know. And I mean, it's just killing me sitting there listening to that. So I think that was, you know, that first moment. I mean, my first race was 1967. And it was the year of the turbine, the Parnelli-Jones turbine, which I hated because it was different. Mm-hmm. And as we all know, we don't like different,
we don't
right?
Like
I did.
It's Indiana, for heaven's sake.
I like the sound of the engines, right?
Yeah.
And then here's this, what the heck is that? And it was four-wheel drive, and you had an air brake, and blah, 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 blah. And I'll never forget, Parnelli started on the outside of the second row. He started sixth. And it was a great day because it took 3 days to run the race in 67. It was raining. So I'm in turn 3, Grandstand Dell. And I'm waiting for him to. Mario was on the pole, so I'm assuming, okay, I can't wait. Mario, I can't wait to see the field come out of 2 down the back straightaway right at me. It's going to be unbelievable seeing Mario lead that pack, and boom, there's that crappy orange-red turbine. He had Parnelli in the first lap got up high there, 4-wheel drive went around him, and he led him coming out of 2. I'll never forget that.
That is so cool. Artie, do you have a moment that stands out that kind of? I think. No. I don't think people are as into it as Dave is, as maybe I am, or a lot of people are, but everybody has a respect for it. Yeah. And everybody has part of their life that they can relate to, something to do with the track or some kind of an event, typically.
My first one was the year that John Cock won in the rain delay.
73.
Yeah, that was my
which
first
is
time
considered
there.
one of the most tragic maze in history.
Mm-hmm. But I went to the race, and I didn't see one race car because I was in line at 5 o'clock in the morning with my girlfriend at the time and a couple of other, beer drinking kids. And we were 73. I was what, 17? Mm-hmm. I think I was 17. Yeah. Anyway, we get inside, and I pass out because I've been drinking too long. Next thing I know, hey, the race is over. Let's go. It's pouring down rain, and I'm getting drenched. I've been asleep since I pulled in the place at 8 a.m. Wow. I didn't see anything.
How many people can relate to that story over the years?
Seriously.
How many hundreds of thousands went to the race, passed out, and woke up after?
Yeah. If it weren't for the rain, I'd still be there.
Dan, how about you?
One of my favorite memories is, and I can't remember what year it was, but Aerosmith sponsored a car, the band, and Steve Perry sang the national anthem. And I was there with my older son, and so they got Steve Perry up on the Jumbotron singing the song, and not a great version of it. And it was so funny.
Steven
my
Tyler.
son turns to Steven Tyler. Yeah, Steven Tyler. And my son turns to me and goes, "That woman's not a very good singer." I said, no, she's not.
Ironically, the guy that would sing "Dude Looks Like a Lady."
Exactly.
So, Pete, what do you got?
I'm like you said, I'm not a huge Indy fan in the sense that I would go every year. I've been multiple times. I don't know what year it was that I went the first time, but I happened to be lucky enough to get seats in the first turn. Mm-hmm. And so I'm waiting for the race to start, and it's going the laps, the pace car and everything. So these cars come screaming down the straightaway, and I'm sitting in the first turn, and I literally flinched, thinking, "There's no way these cars are going to stay on the track." Yeah. And the thing that struck out the most to me was that you have to have such an appreciation for these drivers going well over 200 miles an hour, and their tires are literally inches apart. So not only do they have to be good drivers, they have to have a lot of respect for their fellow drivers. It's an amazing scene. If you ever have the chance to get to see the Indy 500 and you haven't, do it.
Well, there's no greater moment in a sporting event
than the start
of the Indianapolis 500.
You're right.
Just from a sensory standpoint, just mind-boggling.
I remember when they had it was in June. They had like Legends Day or something, and like I remember talking to Beth Bowles, Doug White, president of the Speedway, and she was saying that like every living Indy 500 winner was there for that day. And so my younger son and I at that time, we were walking through the gasoline alley and all this stuff, and Mario Andretti drives past us. I mean, I'm like 8 feet from him, and he's in some old like 70s era Indy car. But what I was amazed by, we're looking at the one where they're racing the open wheel cars, and those brakes, they're like on fire as they're braking to go into a turn. Just bright red, glowing because of the heat on those.
Can't imagine.
No idea. That one.
Yeah, those Indy cars are going faster on the straightaway than a 747 has to go to lift off.
Wow,
there's about 5,000 pounds of downforce that keeps the cars on the track. And when you really think about it, what has made it aerodynamics with the wings and things like that, both that you can see and what you can't see underneath the car, they have baffling that slows the air down going underneath the car, so that the car, that's where they create the downforce.
Right.
But with shocks and then the tires, Firestone tires, when you think about a car going into turn one at 240 miles an hour, which is because they don't lift. You drive into the corner when you're running. The patch of tire that's actually touching the ground is small. I mean, you think that's what's sitting on the ground when you really think about it. What is actually in contact with the asphalt? And it's 4 little patches that are whatever, I don't know what the exact dimensions, but with shocks and with the tire compounds and with the aerodynamics is how they get them to go that fast.
I don't know if you call it geeking out, but you have to have a respect for the engineering that's gone into Indy over the last multitude of years and how the cars have evolved so much.
Right.
I mean, these guys are amazing with what they have done to the cars.
You're a dumb kid. You stick your arm, you stick your hand out the window as you're driving on the street, and you just tilt your hand the slightest degrees, and you feel the difference. You feel the difference. Okay, take an actual wing and they have the pieces on the back that they can adjust by 1/1000th of an inch, and so adjusting that wing by 1/1000th of an inch will create exponentially more downforce or lift, whatever you want it to do. And so that's where a lot of that has to come in. And of course, the how the air is, is it rainy, is it hot, is it humid, is it wet, whatever, will affect that also.
And it's amazing for you too, from your history, when you think about the races in the late 60s, and you look at Mario's ride, and you look at Marcus Ericsson's car last year. It's staggering.
They're like little airplanes.
They're still open wheel now, but they are so. I mean, and let's hope they're always protected and kept safe. But unfortunately, sometimes when bad things happen, that's when they create, and that's when they develop the better safety features. Because man, it's so different, and you have to. You look at them, and it just blows me away how cool it is.
In the 50s and 60s, death was a constant companion. The 1955 Indy 500, within 3 years, 18 of the 33 starters had been killed.
Oh my goodness!
Wow.
Yeah. And you talk about Lou Palmer, who was an unbelievable wordsmith. I mean, he was fabulous at what he did. His first year on the radio network was 1958, and they go, okay, kid, here's what's going to happen. Sid Collins, he goes, we're going to stick you in the third turn because nothing happens in the third turn. So they stick him over in the third turn. Well, the first lap, they come down. Ed Elysian tries to make a pass. They tangle. 16 cars are eliminated in the third turn. And oh gosh darn it, from Seymour, Indiana, Pat O'Connor, who was the most popular driver by far in that era, who was from down in Seymour, Indiana, he goes over a tire, ends up outside the racetrack, flips upside down, is killed. Oh my goodness. And so that was Lou Palmer's introduction, his first call as the first lap of the very first Indy 500. And one of the neatest calls, he had so many great ones, but killing time. He was the pit reporter in 1970 when Al Sr. won his first 500, and he was down in Victory Lane, and there was Sid threw it to him, and he had to wax poetic for about 4.5 minutes before he finally got to talk to Al Sr., and he just did it masterfully. He was just fabulous.
Just a different breed of broadcaster. And, I was very privileged to get to work with a lot of these guys who don't exist anymore. And that's a whole other history of the track that you appreciate because you got to be behind the scenes with that too. The voices of the 500 and the men, Artie just nailed it. Like a good baseball announcer, like the Vin Scullys and Ernie Harwells of the world. They're not doing play-by-play. They're telling a story.
Right.
Same thing at Indy.
Painting pictures. And the first real year of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway radio network was 1952. Sid Collins, who was a salesman for WIBC. It had been done by the Mutual Network for a few years before that, and they decided they're getting out of it. So, he's thinking, well, Sid goes, I want to continue this on the radio. So what he did was he went to every radio station in Indianapolis and invited somebody from that station to be on the broadcast, thinking if WXLW's got a guy on the broadcast, they're going to air the race.
Yeah.
So he asked as many different guys from as many different radio stations as he could to be on the broadcast. And so 52 is the first year officially for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Radio Network, and it was over 1,200 stations. It grew.
Wow.
And if you think about that now, 1,200 stations. I mean, millions and millions of listeners. Now, the 2016, the 100th running, they did actual Arbitron ratings for that broadcast, and they had 20 million listeners. Now, this is in 16 still.
Are we talking worldwide?
No, that was just just terrestrial in North America.
Yeah.
Just terrestrial, not internet, nothing, and not. And again, just in the 48 states, 20 million, average 7.5 million listeners, unique listeners every 15 minutes.
Wow!
And that was in 2016. So the thing is that people have grown up with grandma and grandpa or their aunts and uncles in the backyard or at the lake or so-and-so doing this. You're cooking out. It's Memorial Day weekend. We're listening to the Indianapolis 500 on the radio. And that still is a habit. I mean, it's sometimes now it's down around 14 million currently is where the listening audience is. But when you look at television, ABC, NBC, it's 6.5 million viewers, but still tons of listeners.
I have a question. One of my favorite wins, and I'm going to ask you about this, but one of my favorite wins was the year that Al Unser Sr. won his fourth. Didn't he come from last place, 33rd?
No, he came from way far back.
I thought he was 33rd that year.
But he had, I think the furthest back anybody has won is 28th, I think. I know 25th. I know Rutherford and Louis Meyer did it. Louis Meyer did it in 36.
But he wasn't supposed to ride. He showed up not having a ride that year.
Yeah.
He was just there to watch and hang out and
Penske took a show car,
Nice.
and put him in it, and Al Sr. won. He won in 70, 71.
That was the most
There was that.
impressive
Remember
one
that
I ever
security
saw.
guard at the museum's like, you can't take that car. We need it.
I forget where it was exactly, but it was probably at a store somewhere.
Yeah.
Of one of his sponsors.
Oh,
with,
my gosh.
Airway on it, sitting in the lobby.
Airway, exactly.
There's a name you don't hear
And
often.
all of a sudden, boom, let's drag this thing out of here.
I'm going to
Come
need
on.
this.
Was that 87?
87. Yeah.
But my question to you, Dave, is what was your favorite moment in a win? What was your favorite win? What driver? What car? What incident?
Well, probably 73 with Gordy, because even that was a horrible situation. I went to junior high and high school with Butch Meyer. His grandpa was Louis Meyer. Louis Meyer Incorporated had just joined up with Patrick Racing, which was the engines for 18 Indianapolis 500 winners.
Wow.
And back then, of course, they had a shop on Industrial Boulevard behind Lafayette Louis Meyer Square. Incorporated had just joined up with Patrick Racing, all the time just John Cock and Don trash out, just watching, just go, my God, there's the lathe. They had a shop on Industrial Boulevard behind Lafayette Square. Eagledale, West Side. I mean, I was there all the time just taking trash out, just watching, just go, my God, there's the lathe that they make Gordon John Cox. There's the lathe that they make. And but so that team, that was like my team, because I got to hang out.
Yeah.
And in 73, that was my senior year in high school, and Louis Meyer Incorporated had a block of tickets in the Northwest Vista in the Fort Turner. So I got to sit up there in their block of tickets. And Louis Meyer, it was anniversary of one of his wins. He won in 28, 33, and 36. And so Louis Meyer, the 3-time winner, was part of the pre-race ceremonies. And we're sitting up there going, hey, I can't wait to see Grandpa. I can't wait to see Louis come by here. And all of a sudden, brrr, he comes flying by. Now, most of those guys are out there just kind of piddling around and waving in the crowd and everything. Louis comes by, wham, flying by. And then pretty soon he comes and sits up in the stands with us. And Butch goes, Grandpa, what? He goes, I was so tired of being down there with all them people. I just want to get up here in the stand. But that year was so bittersweet because Sweet Savage was part of the Patrick Racing team, and he was fatally injured in a crash there. One of the crewmen for the STP team, when that big crash happened, was running down the pit lane, and a fire truck going the opposite direction, and it hit him, and it killed him. And the race only lasted 342 laps.
Did it finish the Monday, or did it go to the Saturday?
I don't remember. It was 3 days. It took 3 days.
So it probably finished the following week, or maybe Tuesday.
Whatever.
Because I know there were times it's been pushed to the following weekend because of weather.
I remember, yes, that's happened, but I remember going to the shop the day after the race, and Sonny was back there, and he had a cart with 4 pistons and 4 rods. And they were sitting there, and they'd been manuflux. That's where they send things through this treating system to look for cracks. And there were all these orange marks on the piston rings and on the sides of the pistons and the rods. And I go, Sonny, what's that? Is that magnified? He goes, oh, yeah, those are all cracks. I go, where'd that engine? He goes, that's Gordy's engine. And I go, well, how much longer would this engine have lasted? He goes, maybe a lap, maybe 100 laps. You don't know. Wow. So the fact that it was rain short. Now, fast forward to 2003, probably one of the most regrettable things I ever did. I'm doing a thing for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway radio network. Where are they now? So I'm interviewing guys and talking to them. So I talked to Bill Vukovich Jr. Now, Bill Vukovich Jr., his dad, the Mad Russian from California, he almost won in 52. He won in 53. He won in 54. And in 55, by the 57th lap, he had lapped all the way up to 6th place. He was killing them. And at Elysian again, tangles with Roger Ward now, coming out of turn 2. There's an accident. Vukovich can't avoid it. He hits him, goes flipping out of the racetrack, and lands upside down, is killed. Bill Vukovich Jr., of course, is back in California, hears about it. So Vukovich is a driver. His son, Bill Vukovich III, was killed in a sprint car crash there. But anyway, so Vuki's had a horrible, Junior had a horrible. In 73, he finished second behind John Connor. And I was interviewing him, and I said, were you upset that the rain delay? And he goes, no. He goes, I had a cracked turbocharger. I was down 100 horsepower. Roger McCluskey was chasing me. Chances are, if the rain hadn't have been rain shortened, the race hadn't been rain, I would have been caught, and I wouldn't have finished second. And then I told him about those piston rings. And if I'd have shot him, I couldn't have deflated him anymore when he found out, when I said, Sonny Meyer said that might have lasted a lap, might have lasted 10 laps. And that's just to think that had the race lasted another X number of laps, maybe what could have. I have felt guilty about telling him that ever since.
Well, you could say that with John Cock Mears. Another lap or two, Mears probably would have won.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, I think what would have happened was John Cock said I was not going to let him pass me.
Yeah.
I think John Cock and he would have tangled, and they would have wound up in the fence. I don't remember who finished third in 82.
The fence.
Yeah.
The fence.
Well, that's the wall.
The fence.
When you talk about this, though, and you guys, and Dan's got a son who's involved with race cars, it takes everything and lady luck and some divine intervention for you to win a race.
Oh, most certainly. I mean,
because there are so many things, minor, major, that really have to come together.
Yeah. You figure, okay, the cars at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, they're traveling 240 mile an hour. It's over a football field a second.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you come into the pits, you're only stopped for 8 seconds. But that's 8 football fields or more, and then you're going to lose more because slowing down and speeding up because you can't go over 60 in the pits. So you figure if you're in the pits another half a second, that's half a straightaway.
Yeah.
Okay. So that guy on the left rear or the right front or the left front, if he just bobbles one little bit, okay, or one little miscalculation or one little unscrewed, something, just one little thing going wrong. In 1941, Wilbur Shaw, who was the last Indiana-born driver to win the 500, by the way, he had won in 37, 39, and 40. 41, race morning, there was a big fire in the garage area. And a lot of things got destroyed, but luckily his car did not get destroyed, Wilbur's, but they had a wheel that they had determined had some cracks in it, and they had marked it with chalk so that they wouldn't use the wheel during the race. Well, in that process of fighting the fire with water, it had rinsed the chalk, and it rinsed the chalk off. So they put that on his wheel. He's winning the race with like 10 laps to go. The wheel breaks, he crashes. I mean, just one little thing. Yeah. It's just, I mean, the stories.
Well, a couple of years, Connor Daly, I think it was 2 years ago, because last year I think he led the most laps of anybody, but the year before that, my son and I were there watching around the back straightaway, and he led, and I think he was in the top 5. A wheel comes off of somebody's car, bounces on his front wing.
Right.
How is,
and just
the odds of that happening?
And not like a major damage, but enough.
It was enough. Yeah, it slowed him down, and I remember him saying that, if they had stopped and fixed it, he would have lost even more position. But it's just the odds of that happening.
I know. It's incredible. And I root for Connor on so many different levels because, being the local
he'll
kid.
Have the fastest lap in the race.
Right.
But he'll end up finishing did not finish, and it's always like the kid has such hard luck, but he's a great driver, and he's a great kid.
He's a really good kid, and you know Beth with Doug Bowles. I know Beth with Derek Daly, because when I was doing radio in the 80s with WIBC, Derek and Beth used to come to Crackers Comedy Club all the time. Right. So they were great comedy. So I was always that's pretty cool. An IndyCar driver coming out to see comedy, obviously a good relief for him. But
getting back to where everybody is responsible for what's going on.
Yeah.
In 2011, J.R. Hildebrand's a rookie driving for Panther Racing, John Barnes. And he has got it wrapped up. He's got it sewn up. White flag lap. He's headed around, and what happened was his spotter in the third turn was so excited that they were going to win the Indianapolis 500. He abandoned he left early so he could get down to victory lane. So when JR comes running down the straightaway, the backstretch, into turn 3, there's nobody, a spotter to warn him, hey, Charlie Kimball's running slow in the groove in the short chute. And so here comes JR, tangles, hits him, nowhere to go, goes up, to avoid him, hits the wall, and loses the 500 because his spotter had left.
That was Dan Weldon that won, right?
Yeah, Dan Weldon.
Yeah.
So, Dave, you mentioned spotters, for the fans that aren't aficionados. So each team has explain to us what a spotter does, how many there are, what their functions are.
At the Indy 500, they have somebody in the first turn and the third turn, and they talk to you. There's somebody gaining on you. There's a high. There's somebody low. Hey, wait a minute. There's a crash in turn 1. Watch it. Stay low. Stay low. Stay high. Stay high.
Extra pair of eyes, essentially.
Yeah. There are other pair of eyes that constantly are telling you what's going on, because again, you're traveling a football field a second. So if you're coming out of 2, you're going down the back straightaway, you hit 240 miles an hour, all of a sudden coming out of the third turn where you can't see it yet, there's an incident, and you see a yellow light, but you don't know where it is or what's going on or how serious it is. Your guy goes, there's a horrible crash in the short chute coming out of 3, stay high, slow down, whoa, get down to the apron, get down to the apron, get down to the apron. He's telling them stuff like that.
Okay. Well, and that guy, that spotter who left his position, his next words were, "Welcome to Walmart. Would you like a card?"
Right. Yeah. Great story. John Cock, when radios were first put in the cars, John Cock liked to jack around on the radio, and nobody appreciated it. His crew guys, it didn't. They didn't like. He'd be on there. He'd go, "Whoa, no, I can't believe it!" And then he'd let go of the mic. And they're going, Gordy, what's wrong?
Hilarious.
And Gordy, what's going on? And he goes, nothing, I got you. No. Okay, so at one point, Sonny Myers was doing a radio for him, and it was a practice day, and all of a sudden the yellow light comes on. Well, Sonny gets on the radio. He goes, Gordy, yellow. And there's a pause, and all of a sudden he hears, "I'm the cause of the yellow."
That's great. great. I love it. I don't know if there's as many characters as there used to be. It seems like the older Indy years, you had the characters. And who was the driver? I remember Lou Palmer telling me the story about one of the guys when they would come into pit row for the inspection before they go out on the track. I don't know if they just weren't ready or what the deal was, but I guess when they lifted up the to do the inspection, it was just a bunch of beer on ice.
It was Jim Hurtubise, and Hurtubise was hanging on to the front engine car. The lure he wanted, he had the Mallard, a car of his own design. And he had battled with USAC because he was way slow, but he still wanted to try to qualify, and they didn't want him to. And anyway, so the last day of qualifying, he pushes the car out again. All right, and everybody's going, oh no, here comes Hurtubise. He's gonna, because the last few minutes of the fourth day of qualifying are very tedious, and they're bumping, and so you've only got a few minutes. I mean, it's 6 o'clock, and if you got 10 guys in front of you, and some guys out there trying to qualify and run 3 laps, and he's 6 miles an hour off the pace, he's just wasting time, and everybody's mad. So Hurtubise comes down, he pushes the car, and he's way back in the line, and the gun goes off at 6 o'clock, and they open the engine compartment, and he was sponsored by Miller High Life, and they had no engine in the car, and lo and behold, it's full of Miller High Life. There's a lot of guys. Elio's very personable. Tony Kanaan's very personal. Dixon's kind of a driver.
Tony's got that character too.
Yeah. Good guy.
And obviously Elio's been the ambassador.
Right.
And I thought, and not to bring up a sad moment, but I thought Indy was coming back with Dan Weldon because after going through so much turmoil and his success, everybody loved the band. Right. And of course we know the tragedy there, but I think now they've got a great core of drivers.
Right. Yeah. And they had guys, Stan Fox, who was I really like Stanley. He was injured in a horrible crash in '95, and he came back, but he was he'd had some brain damage. But such great stories about him, Stan Fox, and another USAC midget driver named Kevin Olson. About in the mid '90s, Stan was sponsored by the American Bowling Congress, and so they had a golf cart with this 8-foot tall bowling pin hanging out the back that they would drive around, to promote bowling. So he was booked to be on the Today Show, the NBC Today Show in New York City. So Stan Fox and Kevin Olson, they tow this thing to New York City and trying to find a place to park. Even at 4 a.m. in New York City, especially with a car, a truck, and a trailer. Well, they finally find a place, but it's like over a mile away from where they're supposed to be. And so they go ahead and take the golf cart out, and they're driving down through the streets of New York City, and a cop spots them. And so they start dodging the cop, going through alleys and back parking lots and this, that, and the other. They finally somehow wound up at NBC, and they pulling on the set, and they're on set. And Stan said that he looked over and he saw that cop just glaring at him. That cop had finally found him, but didn't want to interrupt him and pull him off the set of the NBC Today Show.
I hate to have to wrap things up, but in the last couple minutes here, tell me as far as you right now, during the month of May, do you do things where people can hear some of the stories? Do you do some podcasting or broadcasting? What's going on with you? Because, man, Dave, we could sit here for hours.
Well, I was in my first race was 67, and then in 82, I did my first appearance doing media work, getting quotes and stuff. So from 82 to 2020, I had media responsibilities, 38 years. And after the 2020 Indy 500, the radio network, we got to cut back, blah, blah, blah. And so 20 and 21, I have just bought tickets with my fiance, Becky, and we go across the street. I run the American Legion Post 500 right across the street from there. That's a whole nother podcast. But we just walk across the street. I watch the 500. When I do stand-up shows now, I tell a couple of stories.
Yeah.
I usually tell that 77 story, and then another one where I interviewed Mike Pence, and a handful of other stories. But then I talk about, you got to know, to live in the great state of Indiana, you have to know who won the 500 the year you were born. And so I do that and some other things. So, but no, I don't, other than that, I don't do any, I do this podcast because you guys asked.
Well, I hope somewhere someone. I just hope somewhere someone's listening, man, because we got to tap into it. You got so much, and this has been amazing. Thank you.
Thanks for being here with us.
And we've known you forever, and this is, of course, the other side of Dave Wilson, because we've always known you as the stand-up comic and just a good friend, good person.
Thank you.
And I know Indy is in your DNA, like it is for a lot of people.
Right.
It's amazing stuff. So I appreciate you sharing the stories. I know all the guys are pretty much like, well, I guess we could do a 3-hour podcast. Let's go ahead.
Certainly good.
Let's go ahead. Let's go ahead and do it. Dan, appreciate you, man. You did a nice job. Thank you.
Be here.
Thank you so much. Dan had to pinch hit today for Art Baker.
Yeah.
Art is doing a calendar shoot. He is Mr. June.
Right.
The production calendar monthly. He is Mr. June this year. So.
I'd love to hear his stories about his dad.
June is bursting out all over.
I do as much as I can to always talk about Bill Baker, because I'm all about giving nods to the legends. And just a great time in radio history.
Absolutely.
Pete Molina,
Great to be here, man. This is I literally could sit here for
telling
days, not hours, just days.
Well, you can still stay here for days. We're leaving.
Yeah,
but
right.
Dave does.
The Beatles stayed at the Speedway Motel in September of '64 when they performed at the fairgrounds, and oh gosh dang it, the legend.
Jerry Baker.
Jerry Baker introduced him at the Coliseum, and Bounce and Bill introduced him at the grandstand that night. But I saw him drive down Georgetown Road. They drove right down by the track. And there's another half an hour's worth of stories about Ringo. The state trooper took him, Ringo at 2 in the morning wanted some breakfast, and so the state trooper took him to Noblesville. His wife got up, fixed Ringo Starr breakfast, and then he drove back down.
I missed the motel. I don't know if there was a way to keep it from a history standpoint. I was kind of surprised it never got like a historic landmark put on it or something. I don't know. It's just a lot of history to that place.
Yeah.
But from what I hear, though, there's big plans. There's lots of stuff on the drawing board for outside the track, because I know they want to make it more than just they want to make it a year-round area as far as visiting and coming in to enjoy stuff. Artie, thank you.
Hey, thank you.
Appreciate your visions again, because I know sometimes you have visions.
Of urinals.
Are you
I need a urinal.
Of course, there we go. You can check that off, Pete.
Yes.
Boomer bingo, Pete. You can check off. Artie makes urinal or some kind of.
Artie and his bodily function.
I'm a winner today.
We always like to wrap up with a quote here on Boomers with Beverages. Don't forget to check the website, boomerswithbeverages.com. Leave you with this, since it's 6 comics sitting around, and I say 6 because we've been joined by Randy Montgomery as well to watch the podcast.
Randy is waving right now for those of you listening at home.
Yes. Another quote from Mitch Hedberg, who we all appreciate the humor of. A quote, Mitch, and this is so apropos: "You can't please all of the people all of the time, and last night all of those people came to my show." Until we talk again, this has been Boomers with Beverages.